How's everybody doing today? I wanted to go through and do a new or updated version of my electrical video. The last one was received really well and I got a lot of views, but I wanted to add a few things to it and hopefully help make more sense of things if it didn't cover in the last one. This one's going to go over a lot more. And with that being said, hopefully this helps and you enjoy it. Let's get started. Alrighty, let's talk generators. So your small generator, the small one and the Voltec prototype. I actually use this one quite a bit because I like how small and compact it is and it's quiet. Your medium is 5. The solar panel is also 5. The large is 10 power. These are 12. So all the the renewable energy ones, like the windmill, the really big crazy goofy windmill, and the water mill. There we passed. Watermill are all 12. The fusion and the super reactor are 100. For the most part, the only reason you should ever really use these two guys is if you're powering a radiation shower or decontamination shower or a bunch of water. For the most part, if you're just putting lights on in the house, you really all I need is this one of these little guys. If you're doing, you can do one of these and power one vendor and all the lights in your house. For some reason or not, today of all days when I go to try to film this, normally if you, I don't know why you're on, oh I know where you're on, let's turn this spotlight off. Normally you power a vendor, which is 3, yours produces 3, and you connect this to a thing, you'll power everything. But as soon as you normally, it does not work right now for some reason, it's bugged. If I connect this to an additional power, it seems to still work. Instead of what it normally does. But if I disconnect this, these two do not power. But for some reason right this second on this custom server there's a bug where if this is connected to that, it will power everything. But normally on a normal server, I'm pretty certain, unless it's a bug right now, as soon as you connect this to an additional source over the number of power that this produces, it will only power the first thing. Everything else additional will not power like it does right now. But for some reason, at this very moment, we'll power everything. I wonder if it'll do a rad shower. Who knows? Let's see how buggy this game is at the moment. Nope, that is way too much. It's like, nah, not gonna do it. But anything under the certain amount, it'll run it. So if you just want to run a single vendor and light up a house, all you need is enough power to turn on the generator and you can do that and light the house. So that is power versus power rating or requirements. Let's talk about proximity power. So the power connector, the wire one, just the plain wire connector. Let's go here. These guys have a proximity range of about that much. It is basically 2 squares in any direction in a sphere. And I made this one so I could show this. The small power radiators from the conduit is way smaller. It is way less power. It is basically 1 square in every direction. So if you want to run proximity with these, you need way more of them and it's going to cost you way more budget. That being said, it can be used in some really cool ways, like making light switches. It actually work rooms instead of a whole house or whole floors. But overall, I don't really use these a lot because they to route them takes a lot of budget unless you're just going to use 1 or 2 connectors to a wire. But that is the proximity of the conduit radiators. And that is a proximity of the just regular wire connector. And like I said, it is 2 squares in every direction in a regular sphere. And if you want to see like how far your proximity is, let's take a floor connector. You can actually see it now. If I connected power to this, the range of everything it would power. It's kind of a neat little built-in feature if you're trying to connect power to it. You can see the range of it. With the highlights. So let's connect this back. And there's proximity power. Alright, switches. Switches do exactly what you think they do. Like the switch power pylon. Flip a switch, everything it's connected to it gets powered. You can take a switch, run to something, run to another switch, and then make a sequence of things that would turn things on and off, but you would need to have, you know, all of the one. And the only drawback to that is, let's say you have 10 switches and you have all of them on except the first one, and you flipped the first one, all of the everything would be on. So making layers of that, not really that interesting unless you're doing like puzzles. And then for puzzles, normally I make like a pressure plate, and standing on the pressure plate powers a switch to do something, but it's only for like a temporary thing. The random switch literally does a random power to one of the 2 nodes. That's all it does. I wish there was more, but we don't have logic gates, so this thing will randomly turn on one of the 2 at random. That is all it does. I really don't see a really big use for this, but that's what it does. The tripwire is mostly useless. If it had a reset timer, then it would be useful, but for the most part it is not. Regular switch, turn it on, power something, turn it off, power something, or unpowers it. Pretty simple. Pressure plates, same thing. Sends power when you're standing on it. The counter is useless. It doesn't do anything. At least it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. This is supposed to send power after it cycles a certain amount of times. It doesn't. It literally sends power every time. So all it does is when you step on the thing or you power something, it does a cycle and shows that it goes up to 0 and then starts over. But it does not function the way it is. If it did, then you could actually make some really cool like sequences and timers and specific things, but it doesn't work like it's supposed to. Maybe one day it will, and then you could actually make like a combination lock. That would be really cool, but it doesn't. So that is what it is. These lights here, the cycling light, will produce light at a different color on whatever you set it as. You can do this manually by clicking on it and waiting. It's really obnoxious, but it does change color. A way around that is use a terminal, and terminal works by basically you connected to any part of the network. Your best bet is either connected after your main pylon or connected directly to generator, and it will literally control anything that is attached to it. So like light boxes, you can set color. Let's say we want them blue and make it dim. You can set the lights to all the lights to blue. Now if you want to set each individual light that is connected to it, you'll have to disconnect all of them except the one you're working on, and then you can adjust each individual one by one, or you can go stand in it and click on it. You can do random to all of them. This will do all switch controls. You can turn all switches off or turn them all on. So if you want to control individual switches, they would need to be on their own circuits or work on them individually. The optical sensor, you can arm all, and you can set trigger target to hostiles only or anything. The biggest problem with the tripwire is it literally works and then you have to reset it manually after every trip. If it had some sort of like reset after a minute, that would be super cool, but it doesn't. The power counter, this is supposed to let you control when it sends power. So like it's supposed to send power on 6. Alright, but it doesn't work. So it just sends power and cycles a number. Again, this is broken and this is mostly useless. It worked that time, but that's it. It's done. You have to physically rearm it or reset it. And the only way I know to do that is with the terminal. You go back to terminal and then arm. And then it just does the opposite of whatever it was. So before the door was closed and then I opened it when I tripped it. And now I closed it when I tripped it. It's just pointless, so don't use this unless it's like a one-time thing. So that's pointless. Again, pressure switch, stand on it, power things. And that is the majority of the switches and mechanical stuff. Running wires and conduit through your house. We'll start with wires. They're pretty simple. One thing you really need to make sure you do when you do any wiring and setup is if you're going to use wallpaper, put it on first. At least a wallpaper, doesn't matter which one it is, if it's final or not, as long as it has wallpaper. Make sure you have your wallpaper on before you start putting any wire connectors on or any, you know, like wall decorations. Because let's say you didn't and you put a picture on the wall. I'll just stick the chalkboard on there. And then you stick a wall connector. I always go past them all the time. You know? And then you're like, oh, I forgot to do wallpaper. It just takes them off. So, if you are going to use wallpaper, whether you're double walling, single walling, most every build I use uses double walls. If you don't know how to double wall, it's pretty much you place a wall. Well, this one doesn't like it. Let's go to a different wall. If they have thick doors, they don't like it. All you need is, and you can't do it on the wood ones either. Do this one here. Wall, spin it around, stick it, and then you can convert it to whatever wall you want. One of my favorite combinations is this window with this window. And then you have a nice set of windows with shutters. I really like that a lot. But the half walls and angle walls, you will need to use the concrete and then torch them to double stack them. But basic walls, wall, flip, and then you double wall. But let's say you're gonna run, you have your generator on the outside. Let's stick a generator. Sometimes it'd be nicer if these are a little more organized. So you have something on the inside or outside and you want to hook to something on the inside. Let's just put a vendor in. I know I explained this in another one, but I'm going through it so it all makes sense. Literally convert it to a doorway, connect it, convert it back. It will work through a window too, so you can go right through it and then convert it to whatever you want. That's simple in and out for wiring. So, if you need to go through floors, no big deal. It's, let's just, we know where the window or the wall would be. It's gonna stick this power connector here. And convert to a wall or doorway, wire to it, convert back. But if you want to go upstairs, you can actually do that too. You take a wall connector, put it where you want it. If you convert your floor to the mesh, you can go right through it down with the connector. And then put it back to the floor you want. And then you have a wire run through the floor and run through the wall. Super simple. If you wanted your vendor here, set your vendor there. Oh. Custom server jump height stupid when you have it set. And then you just connect it. Then you have your vendor inside, super clean, simple, and this is covering quite a bit of proximity for power. But let's say you don't like these wires and you want to do conduit. Conduit is pretty interesting. It does take a lot more budget to use conduit, so most of the time when I'm using it, I'm actually using it more for like actual decorating with the conduit, like making ladders and whatnot. Different ways to use the conduit is either using it as basically like runners. So you would just connect power to this, and then you could run, you know, it over a long distance if you wanted to. But again, this does take a bit more budget, so when it wants to snap, sometimes it's just weird. Why are you fighting with me? What is the issue? But nonetheless, you would either run it from point over to point connect, or you would run point to a radiator, which would radiate power. You can also connect it to, you can go off with it. There are the lights. The lights are just on when they're connected. You'd have to run a switch to them to get them to be off. But they're literally just always on as long as there's power. So if you wanted to turn them on and off, you would need a conduit switch in between. Something like this guy here. Let's get rid of this. And then you would be able to turn it on and off. But it would take everything in that chain and turn it on and off. So that is kind of basically how the conduits work. But you can route power to them and then connect them to other things. And that's how you would use conduit. The pieces aren't too complicated, they're fairly self-explanatory. But with these, unless you're using the radiator, they don't produce power unless you connect them to things. So like this to a connector. These power pylons do proximity power, leave those two as well. But this won't power until you connect to it at the endpoint, so you need to go to this to something to do proximity. But if you know how you're going to actually lay out your house before you build it, then you can easily hide the conduit in the wall. So let's say I'm going to double wall, all right? you would put your conduit right on the edge of the line, right on the line here. And then, since I'm splitting the difference, let's go to wall. Double wall. Go back to my power connectors. Put in a power connector. Or you could do proximity power, but as I showed you earlier, or later, depends on however I order this. If you're going to use a proximity connector, they're not very good, so don't use that. Just do one of these guys and then a wire connector. And then you convert your back to a wall. And if you did this and then you put wallpaper on it, that's going to disappear. Like I said before, whatever one it's stuck to, it's going to remove, so you'll have to go back, put your connector back in. Convert your wall back again. Once you have wallpaper, you can change between any of the wallpapers, it doesn't matter. That's why if you ever watch any of my builds, like my live builds, I'll go and put whatever wallpaper on all the walls. And then that way when I go through and start decorating and wiring, it's already done. You don't have to fight with it. So that is a quick way to run your conduit and hide it. But you'd have to know your floor plan, or you can take in, like I could go in here. I already know, let's say, we wanted to, let's do a wall here. So we would know I would be doing this. So you could take your wall out. Since we know how I'm going to lay it out, I could simply go in, because you can't just stick this through. It doesn't like it. It wants to snap and be weird. Even when snapping off, it doesn't go. But take these out. I can easily split the difference here. And then start adding the connectors. Oh, before we do anything, we'll add a jank wallpaper, just something to be on the wall that we don't have to worry about it. Put that on. And then convert wall back. You did a window there. You probably wouldn't like it, so if you did want to do this with a window, no big deal. You just take your connector here, drop her way down here, and you have that in, and all you would need to do is connector on the outside and then hook to your power source. Well, if it was close enough. Well, you get the idea. And that would be how you would run there. If you wanted to run power upstairs, you know, I haven't tried to do that. Let's try this. Because I don't know if that would work. Let's do this here on the edge. I mean, technically, Yep, as long as you know how you're going to run everything prior to placing the walls, you can literally just run the conduit in place and then place your walls, and you can have your conduit hidden in the walls, but make sure you put wallpapers on there before you start filling it out, or your stuff will disappear. But that's pretty much the extent of conduit, and you know, you just have to basically tinker with and figure out how you want to run things. But that is a super sneaky way to hide your conduit in the walls. I mean, heck, even that doesn't look bad. That's pretty clean. The other way is just running it along the floor and on the roof. You can do the same thing on the roof like I was mentioning earlier with the false wall. You know, do one of these, then do everything, and then just leave the open top with the inner roof, or do double roofs, run all your conduit in and around, then repair your roofs. So that is conduit and basic wiring. Alrighty, so if you're going to power a structure, and let's say all you want to do is lights and maybe a vendor, you don't need a ton of things to power the place. You could do this as simply as, you know, if let's say you want to do your generator outside, all you really need to cover a structure this big is basically one connector. You can put it here. That will power every bit of this 2x2 building, like all the way out to the edge. Both floors, top to bottom, you covered. With that alone. And then you could do your vendor outside if you wanted. But let's say you wanted the vendor inside. Where are my vendors? So we'll just do the big stupid one because it's visible. Just putting it inside doesn't do anything. It needs to be powered directly. But let's say you want to have your vendor inside and your generator on the outside. All you gotta do is take and turn your wall into a doorway or a window. Connect through to the thing. Oh, we're a little close. Move it in a smidge. And then if you wanted to get it really sneaky, you could put your connector, you could do it inside, and you'd have more proximity to the building by putting it inside here. And just connect there. If you didn't want to do that, you wanted to hide this connector, while this is a doorway, you could put your connector there, connect to it, make it back a wall, and then you have powered the entire place as well as your vendor. I know that's sticking through there. If you do it a double wall, it won't. But that's the gist of all you really need to do to power a structure like this. If you're making a much bigger structure, then you need power in more places. You could run, you know, connectors up and around, but knowing how far a connector's proximity power will do will let you know where to place your power and how to run it. Another simple way to power a structure without if you wanted to hide it, is do it in a roof. So let's say you could even do a false side roof. So if you didn't want to see it from the ground, you could take these little half walls and build a false side of your roof, and then put all your power on the top. Or you can do what I do a lot of times, is I build a double roof. Double roof by, you build your taller roofs, and then you hit it with a flamethrower. I'll take these other ones out so you can see it. So you would just burn it. And then you place the flat roofs underneath it. And then you repair. If you didn't want to kind of fiddle with the roof placement to put your power in, you could go now, put in your generator. You could place it wherever you want. Put in power connectors. Basically, you need these about every... I don't think you can do it every 2 because of the droop of the wire. It won't allow you to, so you'll do them about every square. And all you need is a strip down the middle, and you pretty much have covered the entire building. In reality, all you need this is basically right there in the middle. Repair your roofs. And then you have your power and the roof completely hidden, and it's nice and clean. But like I said, you might need to do more connectors. That way you reach all the way down. So, the other way to do power is spot power, and that is what I do in a lot of my builds. If I'm running vendors on the inside, which is unusual, but I have done it before if I want vendors on the inside. What I tend to do most is taking this little guy here, and then taking a stash box. You place this guy on top. Connectors on the back, so I'm going to put it really close there. And then you take a power connector. Tend to use this one quite a bit. Connect it. And I'll do this towards this side here. And then if you have the terrain to work with, you can sink this into the stash box. Another way to merge if you don't have terrain is use the pressure switch. You just need a pressure switch and a generator, doesn't matter which one it is. Connect the power, and then you can take your stash box, generator, your power connector, connect them, and then set it on there, and it just takes time. It's a little weird later on because you've got like the wires fighting with you. So you just gotta move around a little bit. And you have a really clean power source that you can just put anywhere in your camp without looking like it's anything other than a stash box. And you have power to basically, you know, cover that 2 square. Like I said, it will cover the distance of 2 foundations in any direction in a sphere, and that is spot power. And if you wanted to have your generator next to your vendor, you could do that inside and cover everything. And that is a super clean way to have a really nice simple build without a bunch of wires running everywhere and looking super obnoxious. That is, like I said, one of the ways that I do it the most. And that is basic wiring for this and spot power. If you're wiring over long distance, a couple easy ways to do that is either you can use these power pylons. Simply link them. You can't really stretch them too awful far because sag gets to you, but you can go quite a ways with these. If you're going to go further distance, you're better off using like the pylons, because you can get these a little further apart. And since you can take these much further apart, they tend to be a little bit more budget friendly. But it's not a huge amount of distance because SAG usually gets to the best of you, but it's a little further. But that's mainly if you're going to run like power around your perimeter or running it from, let's say, your house to like resource nodes or different stuff like that. But that should pretty much cover the bulk of all the electrical in the game. If you are looking to figure out how to do something else, you're more than welcome to leave a comment and I can try to tackle it. But I hope this tutorial helped out, and maybe I'll see you in the next one.
Why can't I put the past on ice? So fucking bad at cutting ties. I'm sick of sucking on old juice. The same old news still applies. I wish that I could just move forward.